You're listening to the Greeks Gridiron, live with Ethan Haristodoulou.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Greeks Gridiron. I am Ethan Haristodoulou, and as we do every Tuesday morning, we're diving into power rankings, going over this past weekend's slate of games, and ranking all 32 teams from worst to first. So make sure you dive into that comment section down below. Let me know your thoughts on this weekend's games. Let me know your power rankings, your thoughts on my power rankings. But let's dive right into it, beginning with the bottom four teams in the NFL. Coming in with a new number 32, we have ourselves the Arizona Cardinals, who once again just looked like a bottom tier team in a loss where they only put up 7 points against the Ravens. Then we have ourselves the Carolina Panthers, moving up a spot here to number 31, notching their first victory over the Houston Texans. At number 30, we're looking at the New York Giants, who are supposed to be getting Daniel Jones back, but lost Tyrod Taylor in the process. And we have the Patriots at number 29 with another ugly loss to their division rival Miami Dolphins, this time in Miami. So the Cardinals moving down to number 32, I felt it was only fitting to reward the Carolina Panthers. And I mean, at this point now, it sounds like we're either going to get Clayton Tune or Kyler Murray, which is kind of a toss-up to sit there and digest for the next few days here. But since we don't necessarily know what's going on at quarterback right now, the Cardinals are now sitting at, I believe, 1-6, 1-7. They only have one victory at this point in the season. We are about to see a drastic change in the offense, which is still kind of up in the air. I feel like it's fitting for them to sit at the very bottom of the NFL. Panthers moving up a spot with their big victory over the Houston Texans. I got to give it up to the Panthers, man. I did not expect them to be able to come out of that game victorious. I felt like the Texans were a surprise team that were playing fairly well, even though the record isn't necessarily anything crazy by any means, but I didn't expect them to really hold up much of a fight. But it was a battle of the top two picks in this past year's NFL draft, and it was a solid game for what it's worth. And I mean, it might not have been the prettiest offensive performance, but the defense really stood up against a passing attack in Houston that's been pretty impressive to this point. They held on long enough to let their offense drive down and kick that game-winning field goal. So hats off to the Carolina Panthers. Great win for them. Happy that we now have 0 winless teams in the NFL. No sweating any 0-17 teams this year for the foreseeable future. The Giants at number 30. I mean, what can I say? A game that you probably should have won in what was one of the ugliest offensive games I think I have ever witnessed. We're looking at literally 4 total conversions on some 30-plus attempts on third down. I think there was like nearly 30-something punts in the game, whatever the number actually was. It was atrocious. And to be able to put yourself in a position to finally blow that game and lose towards the end there, I think just kind of speaks to the woes that this team has been facing. Hopefully Daniel Jones coming back helps steer the ship a little bit steadier, but I mean, it's not like the Giants were any sort of electric offense by any means, even when Daniel Jones is in there, but they were at least, I feel, a little bit better than what they have been the last few weeks without him. So maybe there's some light at the end of the tunnel, but right now, I mean, at least the defense has looked pretty good because they've had a pretty strong showing the last 3 weeks. I'll give them that, keeping all 3 of their opponents the last 3 weeks within the teens or less. So, I mean, there's at least that to take away, but this offense in New York is just awful right now, and it is not fun to watch. And the Patriots right in front of them at number 29, a lot of that can be said pretty much the same. The Patriots obviously a little bit better, I guess you could say, but for the most part, another team that just, no matter how many chances you give them, just can't seem to take them. Mac Jones feels like he's good for throwing one really bad interception, and I feel like you really got a good glimpse of that when he threw that pick straight to Jalen Ramsey, allowing him to jump the route and just take it back. I mean, at this point, it feels like, and with the news now that Bill Belichick has apparently signed a extension, whether it's just for the next few years or longer, it wasn't necessarily specified, but there was an extension agreed upon and signed this past offseason. You have to think the Patriots are considering moving on from Mac Jones at some point, and maybe today is the day. Maybe. I'm not going to say it's possible. I'm not going to say it's likely by any means, but maybe we see Mac Jones get moved. There's a team in Minnesota who is now in the market for a quarterback, but I don't really think at this point bringing in Mac Jones is necessarily the answer for Minnesota, but the intrigue is definitely there, and it has been something that I've heard get thrown around the last 24 hours since it was announced that Kirk Cousins' year is done. So just a thought, but I mean, right now, the Patriots are on the fast track to a top 5 pick, and at this point they should be considering selling off. There's really nothing to play for this season. I know that they're only at 6 losses and you never really know. There's still plenty of season left, but this is the time where teams really need to start thinking about the future and kind of taking a realistic look at where they are, and this Patriots offense just ain't it. And not to mention the loss of Kendrick Bourne. I knew I was forgetting something on top of that. The loss of Kendrick Bourne, who was kind of emerging once again as a stud in your offense, one of the lone bright spots. He's gone for the year now as well. Patriots should start considering moving some guys around. Next group of 4 that we have here at number 28, we are looking at the Chicago Bears slipping down a few spots. The Raiders, despite their Monday night loss defeat, stay put. And then at number 26, we have the Green Bay Packers sliding down, and then the Denver Broncos jumping a big 5 spots for them. I think a well-deserved jump in the rankings here. Now, the Bears, I think we got a far more realistic view of what this offense looks like with Tyson Bagent under center. It was not nearly the pretty and exciting game that we saw, especially from the ground game, as we did the week prior, but I think this was a more realistic outcome and a more realistic version of what this Bears offense is going to look like. And last week was just, taking advantage of their opponent, I guess you could say. But tough loss for the Bears. Another one of those teams that has to be really starting to consider what they're going to be doing the remainder of the season. We're all just kind of sitting around twiddling our thumbs waiting for Justin Fields to come back. But again, another one of those teams that even with their starting quarterback, not necessarily that much better than what they had going on, but I do think that you feel a little bit better with the threat that Justin Fields can be with his legs on the field. Another team that's just not quite where anyone expected them to be right now. And I mean, another team that I expect to be picking potentially twice in the top 5 come season end. At number 27, we have the Raiders, despite their awful performance offensively, where it just felt like Jimmy Garoppolo could not get on the page with any of his wide receivers, including Davante Adams, who literally didn't have a single catch until the third quarter. Riddle me that, how you have one of the best wide receivers in the NFL and you're not finding ways to feed him the football. I don't know. You could see his frustration was very visible. I feel bad for the defense because they did a really good job hanging on and keeping that game close for a large bulk of that game, and it was just the offense failing them over and over. And I felt like a microcosm of what this season has been for the Raiders, especially offensively, was when they got the big turnover within I can't remember if it was 20 to 25 yards from the end zone. And then Jimmy Garoppolo goes and throws a pick to Kirby Joseph. I just felt like that was literally this season in a nutshell. And it is what it is for the Raiders right now. An offense that is just dead to rights, being led by Josh McDaniels, who is not in the position he should be in right now. I'm not a Josh McDaniels believer. I thought he was awful in Denver, and I could not believe that the Raiders were like, yeah, we want that, and signed up for it. I know that was a long time ago, but it went so poorly in Denver. I can't believe somebody wanted to go around 2 with it, and unfortunately the Raiders are finding out the hard way right now. At number 26, we have the Green Bay Packers. Another team that is just kind of dead to rights right now, and it has to, a lot of it has to do with the injuries. This is one of those teams that is decimated, especially on the offensive line. So when you're dealing with just so many injuries, especially at an important spot like your O-line, coupled with the fact you have so much youth and inexperience, and I feel like every time I watch their offense right now, it was masked a little bit earlier in the season when they were healthier up front on offense, but now that their offensive line is kind of in shambles, I feel like you're really starting to see the glaring youth and inexperience throughout this entire receiving corps, the tight end group. It's very clear that you are dealing with an inexperienced core of guys, and I think the Packers have the lowest, I believe, average age in the NFL right now, or they're among the top. If they're not the lowest, they are within the top 3. I forgot to save the stat for it, but I know they're within that range. You can see that the youth and inexperience is getting to this team right now. And it's unfortunate because there's a lot of things going on. I don't think you can really blame one person right now. The defense is still a solid and formidable unit. I mean, you got a ton of really good players on that side of the ball, but the offense right now just really holding this team back. And it's one of those things that maybe it gets better as we get closer and closer to the end of the season, and maybe we start to see more flashes and bright spots from some of those young wide receivers. But right now we are in a rough go with the Green Bay Packers. And then the Denver Broncos pulling off probably the most improbable upset this weekend. I can't believe they came away with a victory. That was one of those, like, don't look into it too much. It's Chiefs or nothing in that game. And for what it's worth, the Broncos came in and they snapped all kinds of losing streaks that they had to the Kansas City Chiefs. They broke a bunch of winning streaks that Patrick Mahomes has had. This was a unbelievable upset, a great performance by the defense. The offense, it was a bit rocky, and it was a little bit more grindy than you would have liked it to have been, considering how well the defense played in that game, but they were able to shut down the Chiefs, and the Chiefs hadn't lost since week 1, so now they have 2 losses, and you can mark down the Denver Broncos. We can stop talking about the have not beaten the Chiefs since 2015 when Peyton Manning was the quarterback, or whatever it was. You can't talk about Patrick Mahomes having never lost to the Denver Broncos. You can't talk about Patrick Mahomes having never lost a road divisional game. All of those streaks came to an end courtesy of the same Denver Broncos that had 70 points scored on them earlier in the season. Moving into the next 4 teams, at number 24, we are looking at the Indianapolis Colts, who are dropping 4 spots here. At number 23, we're looking at the LA Rams, who dropped considerably as well. The Falcons, another big drop here, losing a game I did not expect them to lose, especially the way they did. And then the Tennessee Titans, not dead yet. I talked about them considering moving guys at the trade deadline. It sounds like they're not going to. I still kind of feel like they should, because you saw some flashes from a big, important spot in youthful talent in Will Levis, and I would like to see more of that for this Titans team right now, especially because I kind of feel like Will Levis kind of stole Ryan Tannehill's job in one game. He had by far the best game any quarterback has for this team to this point so far this season, and you have to be itching for more of that if you're a Titans fan. But before we dive into more of that, the Colts at 24, another tough loss for them. I've got to say, the offense, for what it's worth, has been very impressive to me, because I did not expect them to be as competitive as they have been. But I feel like as I'm watching these Colts games now without Anthony Richardson, I find myself asking myself, man, imagine if Anthony Richardson was there. This would be a far more competitive team. And that's not to say that Gardner Minshew isn't giving his best out there and he isn't performing well. I mean, he is. He's doing an excellent job, all things considered. And I think it really is a testament to his willingness to just take the offense for what it is and run with it, rather than forcing Shane Steichen and the offensive coordinator over there to rebuild their entire offense around him. It feels like they're still running the offense that it would have with Anthony Richardson, sans a few plays maybe here or there. But overall, it's just a team that defensively, not quite where it needs to be. I could see the Colts maybe considering selling some stuff today during the trade deadline. I'm not necessarily sure if anything's going to happen, but I could see them maybe being the sellers of a player or two, maybe. But at this point here, I think we know what this team is. Again, I want to start seeing them move towards the future. With Anthony Richardson being out, I don't want to see them trying to make a push to the playoffs of Gardner Minshew, so I'll be interested to see what the organization does today and going forward. But for now, I'm kind of down on the Colts, and despite how competitive their offense is, they're not quite where they need to be able to compete. At number 23, the LA Rams. Sounds like we're going to be missing Matthew Stafford for a little bit over there in LA with that injury to his thumb. Unfortunate for them, but I mean, even before that injury happened, you want to talk about letting a game just completely get away from you. They kind of just walked into an absolute ass whooping courtesy of the Dallas Cowboys. It was not close very early on in that game. I mean, before you knew it, it was like 24-6 or whatever the score was. But one of those games where there's very clear talent differential between both of these teams here. And for the Rams, for what it's worth, have been a somewhat competitive team this year. I think more competitive than a lot of people have thought they would be, myself included in that group there. But you kind of saw the scale of talent between a team like the Rams and a team like the Dallas Cowboys in two very different places right now. So tough loss for them if they miss out on Matthew Stafford for the next few weeks. Hopefully that thumb can heal up and he'll be good to go. It sounds like it was like a UCL injury or something like that, if I'm remembering correctly. So something to keep an eye on there, but a tough blow to the offense, because without Matthew Stafford there, I have no idea what that offense is going to look like. And number 22, with the Atlanta Falcons. a team that I feel like every single time they make a big victory, I push them up the board, and then the following week I buy in on it again, and then they just stumble their way back. And now it looks like we're finally going to see some Taylor Heineke under center going forward. And that's something that I've kind of been anticipating and waiting on for the last few weeks. I was not necessarily high on Desmond Ridder coming into the season, but I felt like he was in a really good spot to potentially thrive and help take this offense to the next level, and he just has not quite done that. And there's been a lot of issues. It's not necessarily just him. The offensive line has been a little bit of an issue as far as pass protection goes, but I just feel like sometimes Desmond Ridder just hangs onto the ball and is just like staring off into space waiting to get hit, and he fumbles like mad, and the interceptions can be awful at times as well. Like, it's like some of the worst timed turnovers you could possibly ask for coming out of Atlanta right now. So I'll be interested in seeing what Taylor Heineke does. I still really like the Falcons defense. I think if the offense was just moving the football a little bit more, they would be able to hold up a little bit better. I personally, and you know, this is obviously if, ands, buts, what ifs and whatnot. I kind of think that if the Falcons are starting Taylor Heineke from the beginning of that game to the end of that game, we might get a different result. I'm not saying that Will Levis doesn't have the game that he had, but I'm saying that the Falcons offense probably puts up a few more points. Maybe you get one less touchdown out of Tennessee because you're not dealing with as gassed of a defense as you are in Atlanta. Who knows? Obviously, that's not the case. It's all speculation, but part of me feels like we look at a different outcome if we have Taylor Heineke from quarter one all the way through, because that offense was flat and dead until Desmond Ridder got taken out. And then the Tennessee Titans, like I said, I don't want to say I necessarily wrote them off last week, but I did do a whole spiel and discussion on how I think that they should maybe consider moving on from some of their older pieces, building up a bigger draft capital, and then from there, going into next year, really all in with whoever you opt to go with, whether it was Malik Willis or Will Levis. And now after the game he just had against Atlanta, you have to be considering, all right, Will Levis is that guy going forward. I don't think you have a great debut game like that and it just be a complete fluke, because the Falcons defense has been pretty good in some spots. So the way I see it, I still kind of feel like, you know, this is probably not your year. I don't really feel like Ryan Tannehill needs to come back and take the starting job. I think at this point, Ryan Tannehill would serve the team better as a backup to Will Levis if that's who they opt to go with going forward, and just have him be the ear that helps Will Levis through the remainder of the season and kind of riding through his rookie campaign. I would like to see them maybe trade some of the older guys to get some draft capital, or maybe even trade for a younger guy or two that's maybe flaming out somewhere else. I think that this is a Titans team that could benefit from maybe moving on from some pieces that maybe you've had for quite some time, that it's not like they're getting any younger kind of deal. I do think that they can still be competitive, but this is, again, and I've said this for a while now, the AFC South is the Jaguars to lose, and I don't quite know if the Tennessee Titans have what it takes to strangle that division away from them, and I don't quite know if Tennessee, with a rookie quarterback, and I know Will Levis's debut was awesome and exciting, but what are the odds that that's going to be the case each and every single week with a rookie quarterback? Not very likely. I don't know if they have what it takes to seal a playoff spot up, and if they do, it's the 7th seed at best. But I could see more realistic scenario, you get like a 8-9, 7-10 at best type of year from the Titans, and they finish off maybe strong, something like that. But I don't see them as a true playoff contender, at least not at this very moment. I could be wrong, but at this moment, I'm not really seeing it. At number 20, dropping 4 spots here now, 3 straight games in a row. Tampa Bay Buccaneers looking rough on offense. The Saints jumping up 6 spots here, really benefiting from me dropping a bunch of teams around them. This is a team that was sitting at 25 just last week, so keep that in mind. At number 18, Houston Texans, they dropped 4 spots for their ugly loss to the Carolina Panthers, and then moving up 4 spots, kind of benefiting from some teams falling behind them, but also because they do deserve some credit for the, once again, well-fought loss to what some people consider the best team in the NFL in the Philadelphia Eagles. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers offensively have just fallen flat since they came out of that bye week. I honestly thought that the bye week would be good for them. It would give them an opportunity to kind of reset themselves. They were 3-1 going into that bye week, and you really felt like, okay, this allows them to get their offense a little bit more situated, get their ducks in a row, gives them a couple weeks to plan for their next opponent, and then maybe we start to see this offense evolve even more. But it almost feels like they've taken a step back. The inability to run the football, and this is something that's dated back to when Brady was still there, just continues continues to plague this offense. And it sucks because the Buccaneers defense is still a pretty good unit. They have some really good guys there, and they step up every single week, it feels like, but the offense just can't quite get it connected, I guess, is the best way I could put that. Like, you just see Baker Mayfield missing some passes here or there, or Mike Evans is making a drop, or whatever it may be. And then just, again, the inability to run the football kind of makes their offense a little bit more predictable than you'd want it to be. This is a team that's in a really rough spot. Like, at one point, I had them flirting with a top 10 spot in the NFL, and now we're sitting here moving them into 20, and they're working their way down the power rankings and just trending in the complete wrong direction. This is not where I expected this team to be based off of their first few games of the season, but that is the NFL for you. At number 19, the New Orleans Saints finding their offense for what feels like the first time for real this season. This was the game that they needed to have to figure out what they were on offense, to figure out what they could do to be effective. They had a really good mix of Taysom Hill and some crazy plays with him. Love seeing what he can do with the football in his hands, whether he's lining up in a wildcat formation. His threat to throw the football is always another one of those wrinkles to an offense that not a lot of other teams have. Coupled with the fact that running game looks solid, there are still some like misses here or there that this team is plagued with, and it's one of those things that I just, at this point, you would like to see cleaned up already, but they're not quite there yet. But this felt like the game that they needed. Take advantage of a Colts team that's kind of in a weird spot right now. Again, they're missing their starting quarterback for the rest of the season, and they're not necessarily world beaters by any means. You come in and you really found your offense, and you not only found your offense in this game, but with the game somewhat close late, you were able to maintain possession of the football, completely kill out the remainder of the fourth quarter, kick a field goal that puts you up 2 scores, and basically gave you a nice, comfortable victory. Defensively, a little bit concerned that the Colts were able to do what they did, but, you know, like I said, for what it's worth with the Indianapolis Colts, their offense has been, I think, far more competitive than anyone's really expected them to be this season altogether, with when Anthony Richardson was under center and now with Gardner Minshew even more. So I'm not going to knock them too much for that, but a little bit of a head scratcher. That was not quite the performance I thought the Saints defense would have, especially when you consider what they did to a team like the Patriots just a few weeks ago. They completely shut them down. I thought they'd give the Colts a tougher time moving the football. At number 18, those Houston Texans dropping 4 spots here. Again, when I talked about this with the Carolina Panthers earlier, did not expect the Panthers defense to give them as many fits as they did. They pretty much shut down the run. They shut down the aerial attack that the Texans have. They didn't really let them do a whole lot. And, the defense, when it mattered most, was not able to shut things down. I don't know what to make of the Texans, and I feel like that's kind of where I put teams and where the Houston Texans are right now at number 18. From like number 15 to number 18, these are like the teams that I can't really make much sense of. They're middle of the pack for me, and one week I'm looking at them really impressed, and another week I walk away scratching my head, and them losing to the Panthers in this game was one of those games here. This is a game that I kind of thought the Texans might have a real opportunity to break out and show that they were a legitimate team that is fighting for a playoff spot, and then you go and I don't think that they should have lost this game to the Panthers. It's kind of where I'm standing right now. So a little disappointed in that. So I'll keep them at 18 for right now. I'm still impressed with what they've done this season. They're a very competitive team for what it's worth. I mean, even in their losses, they're still losing by very tight margins. So that is definitely a positive there, but definitely not a game I expected them to lose this week. At number 17, we're looking at the Washington Commanders here. And again, like I said, these 4 spots here, 18 to 15, this is like the teams I can't really make sense of, because one week they just look god-awful, and another week they're taking the Philadelphia Eagles to the absolute limit, a team that most people believe is like the best team in the NFL right now, or at least I know a lot of people do. I don't know what to make of them. Defensively, at times they look great. Other times they look bad. Other times they look solid. And then offensively, same thing. Their offensive line is so porous in pass protection. They just let people come through and fly at Sam Howell at will, it feels like sometimes. But then you have games where it does not phase Sam Howell, and it doesn't matter no matter how many times he's getting hit or the pressure he's dealing with, and he's able to make plays. I mean, there was a point in that game against the Eagles where I thought that the Commanders might run away with this game. And unfortunately, the defense kind of fell apart later in the game. They allowed Philadelphia to get back in and take the lead eventually, and then they never looked back. But again, a Washington team that I just don't really know what to make of right now, but I'm comfortable with them middle of the pack right now because they've played some games really well. They've had some really bad head-scratching losses, and just they're one of those teams that I can't really make sense of right now because, again, one week I'm walking away impressed. The other week I'm walking away with massive concerns. This is a week that I'm impressed despite their loss, and they're moving up 4 spots even though they lost because other teams that I felt like deserved to move down further are moving down. So, like, they're the best loser of the week, I would say, is arguably the Washington Commanders. At number 16, moving up 7 spots here, really benefiting from some teams moving around below them. The Los Angeles Chargers, excuse me. Wow, I still do that all these years later. At number 15, and this is one that's probably going to get corrected as soon as next week, but I felt like they deserved it on a 3-game winning streak. The Minnesota Vikings. Hate what happened to Kirk Cousins. At number 14, the New York Jets. They have cracked the top half of the NFL for me at this point here. I don't think I can continue to deny their defense the credit that they deserve for keeping this team in the way it has throughout the entirety of this season. And then we have the Cleveland Browns dropping 1 spot here to number 13. So number 16, the Los Angeles Chargers with Austin Eckler now a few weeks off of his injury. Russ is being knocked off. I cannot stress enough just how important he is to what they are doing there in LA. He is the motor of the offense. I know that all the attention is around Justin Herbert, but I say this all the time, and I will say it again, and I will continue to say it each and every single week. When healthy, Austin Eckler is a top 3 running back, and he is not number 3. So just keep that in mind. But offensively, they looked really good. Defensively, against the Bears team that they should have looked really good against, they did look really good against. And this is a team that on paper should be really good week in and week out. And for whatever reason, they have really bad games, but they also sometimes have games like just the other night on Sunday where they look as good as they are advertised as. So really complete game from the Chargers. Hats off to them. They went in and they steamrolled a lesser opponent like the Bears in a way that I think they should have. At number 15, the Minnesota Vikings. And like I said, this is one that's probably going to get corrected as soon as next week. I could be wrong, but it's just kind of the feeling that I have right now. Losing Kirk Cousins is kind of the death blow for this team right now. I was beyond thrilled to watch this team turn things around the last few weeks and battle their way back, considering just the turnover issues that they had through the first few weeks of the season, basically ruining the start of their year. And just when, it feels like they're figuring things out, Jordan Addison is emerging in the absence of Justin Jefferson. Boom, torn Achilles. Kirk Cousins comes up limping in a weird way, and here we are now having this discussion. I know that they just rattled off their 3rd straight victory, but you have to be considering for the Vikings now just like a fire sale almost type of idea. Like, I understand you probably want to compete, and who knows what Jaren Hall is going to bring to the table if he's going to be your starting quarterback going forward for at least a foreseeable future. But it almost feels like it's time for this team to get like a real kind of rebuild going here. But at the same time, we don't necessarily know what they're going to plan on doing with Kirk Cousins. I know he was like one of the most discussed potential trade targets. Like, the amount of Kirk Cousins to New York conversation that I was having, or not having, that I was hearing was just unbelievable. But I mean, now that that's kind of off the table, you have to wonder, do the Vikings maybe try to get some sort of, prove that you can come back type of deal with Kirk Cousins? I almost feel like it would benefit Kirk Cousins at this point. Coming off of such a serious injury, you have to wonder, like, both sides could feel like, all right, we're comfortable with you. Kirk Cousins is comfortable with them. Why not just, keep this marriage going for at least one more season? And maybe you don't do the fire sale. Maybe you just kind of tough it out for the remainder of the season, get a pretty decent draft picks, I should say, and then kind of try to see if you can reload and go from there. Because this is a Vikings team that's been good. It's just turnovers were the biggest issue and untimely injuries. And now here we are losing the starting quarterback. Now Justin Jefferson has no reason to come back at any point or anytime soon. He can take as long as he needs to with that hamstring. Jordan Addison is emerging now. I don't know if his production is going to slow down with Jaren Hall under center. I would assume it would probably, because of Kirk Cousins and Jaren Hall, the drop off there is pretty significant. But enough about the Vikings. Tough spot for them to be in. I was really excited to see them pull off the victory. It sucks that Kirk Cousins is done for the year now. I'm wishing the Vikings the best going forward. Best of luck to Kirk Cousins in his recovery. Not what you wanted to see for this team that was kind of turning things around after such a tough start, though. The Jets at number 14, another one of those teams that is just battling back and finding ways to win. The Jets defense is one of those units that just does not give up, and they deserve all the credit in the world. To be 4-3 after the start you had, and you've knocked off the Chiefs now, you've knocked off the Eagles, you won the Battle of the Meadowlands. This team is on fire right now, and I know it's not pretty on offense by any means, but if they can hang on, and it sounds like Aaron Rodgers, and I've already preached this whole thing already, but for them to come off another win where the defense was just the star of the show, if they can just hang on, get them to a respectable, like, let's say 8-6, maybe 7-6, something like that, 8-7, along those lines. Aaron Rodgers could maybe come back if he really thinks he can. We've already seen him walking without crutches, in sneakers, throwing a football just a few weeks ago. If they can have a respectable record come December, mid to late December, I can't even imagine the media circus we're going to be dealing with right now. But that's in the future. We'll wait and see. Right now, this New York Jets team is being led by a dominant defense, getting the job done, and I'm here for it. This is like the most unorthodox for today's day and age football type team, and they're winning games. They are 4-3 right now, and they had just rattled off. And I said they beat the Chiefs. I know that they didn't beat the Chiefs. I shouldn't have said that they didn't beat the Chiefs. They played the Chiefs really, really well. They beat the Eagles, and now they have the win over in Meadowlands, in the Battle of the Meadowlands. This is a team that has been competing their ass off, and it's in large part thanks to that defense. Credit Zach Wilson for not tanking the ship, but it is that defense. At number 13, the Cleveland Browns, another team being held on by their defense. The Deshaun Watson thing just continues to baffle me right now. It is unbelievable, the situation that Cleveland is in with their quarterback right now. But Myles Garrett in that defense, man, and Myles Garrett just needs to be highlighted because the performance he is putting on as a one-man wrecking crew is just unbelievable. But that whole defense as a whole is just super, super impressive. Another one of those teams that it is not pretty on offense. They're down a handful of guys due to injuries, and here they are, still competitive every single game. Whether they're winning or losing, it's by literally a possession or less. This is a team that is battle tested, and if they can just hang on, if Deshaun Watson can just, if his shoulder situation can just sort itself out, we might be talking a different story come later in the season right now. But another defense that I just have to give so much respect to, because it's just a game that against the Seahawks team that, you know, in some games they're lights out. In other games, you know, you can give them problems if you pressure, and you can throw off Geno Smith's timing, and they were doing that. And this was a very physical game defensively for them. They really brought it to the Seahawks, and it came down to the final minutes and some offensive mistakes. If they can just get it together on offense, they're a competitive team. The defense is incredible. It really is. I know they had one bad game against the Colts, but every other game this season, this defense has kept this team in it to potentially win it. And it's another group that really deserves their praises. Moving into the next four, at number 12, Pittsburgh Steelers dropping a spot here. Tough injury, and we'll get into that with Mitch Trubisky. The 49ers tumbling this week. Now 3 losses in a row. I thought they needed to drop significantly because they have not looked like themselves offensively. Moving up 3 spots, we have the Cincinnati Bengals at number 10. And then at number 9, we're looking at the Miami Dolphins. So the Steelers dropping a spot as well. They're still 4-3. The injury now with Kenny Pickett is definitely something to be a big concern because, I mean, offensively, they have not looked great to this point in the season, aside from like a few moments here or there. And even prior to Kenny Pickett's injury, it's not like they were lighting the world on fire. They literally had 3 points when Kenny Pickett went down. So I'm not going to sit here and act like his injury really, I think, changed that game that much. I felt like that was kind of the Jaguars game from start to finish there. And the defense doing what the defense has done in Pittsburgh basically just kept them in it for the majority of the game here. They just didn't get quite the amount of turnovers and capitalization you see from this Pittsburgh team sometimes on defense. But holy moly, is that offense bad in Pittsburgh sometimes. And I hear the chants for Matt Canada, and I totally understand it, Pittsburgh. Sometimes whether it's the play calling or just like the consistency and the connection is just not there on offense. I don't know. It is abysmal to watch sometimes. And, Mitch Trubisky came in and, he looked like Mitch Trubisky. So it is what it is. But this is a team that really needs some help on offense, and I just don't think you're going to get it from Matt Canada. But the defense is still phenomenal, though. I mean, all things considered, with how bad the offense was and just the lack of movement that you were getting out of the offense all game long, they still held the Jaguars to 20 points. So credit where credit is due. I think, what was it, like 3 or 4 field goals the Jaguars got forced into? The Steelers defense, still one of the best units in the NFL, and I really hate that I'm looking at 3 straight teams right now with the Steelers, the Browns, and the Jets that all have like championship caliber defenses and offenses that are just like inept. But they're still this high in the power rankings because they're all above 500 teams somehow, because their defenses are all that great. At number 11, the San Francisco 49ers, like I said, needing to drop significantly at this point. You don't go 3 straight losses without, some sort of consequence here in the rankings. And I've got to say, Brock Purdy finally looks mortal, and it almost feels like he's kind of gone away from what's made him successful, and that's taking what defenses are giving him, and he's trying to force a lot of plays. And this was something that I've been waiting to kind of see from Brock Purdy, because the 49ers, since he's taken over, have played such great football that he's never really been in the situation where he needs to battle back. It's more so just like, you have so much talent going for you. You have so much around you that can make you successful, and guys that you can just get the football in their hands and watch them make a play. And now some key pieces go down. Deebo Samuel, you didn't have Christian McCaffrey for a week. But the biggest loss of them all right now has got to be Trent Williams. This team is dying to get Trent Williams back in the trenches for them. It is not the same offensive line. They are not nearly as effective protecting Brock Purdy, opening up running lanes for Christian McCaffrey and the rest of that running back room. They desperately need Trent Williams back here. And I think that if I had to pick, listen, Deebo Samuel is a talent, don't get me wrong, but if I could take one right now and bring them right back into the offense, it would be Trent Williams over Deebo Samuel immediately. They need him over there big time. But defense has kind of fallen off a little bit, and I almost want to say, yeah, you could argue there's been some miscues and mistakes here or there made by the defense, but it's one of those attrition things where if your offense is not moving, your defense is playing more snaps, they're starting to get worn down faster in games. It's kind of hard when your offense isn't really moving the football, or you're getting turnover after turnover after turnover. I mean, Brock Purdy had a couple of interceptions this past week. It did not look great against that Cincinnati Bengals defense. So it is what it is right now. I still think that they're a great team when they're healthy, and it's just they've got to stay healthy. This is a very top-heavy team, it's almost looking like, and they're kind of thin beyond their starting group. At number 10, the Cincinnati Bengals, who got that big victory over those same San Francisco 49ers we were just discussing here. And the Bengals are back. That's all I've really got to say. Joe Burrow looks healthy. The offense looks like they're back in rhythm. They took advantage of an opponent that's kind of down in the dumps right now and in the rough with the injuries that they're dealing with here. And Cincinnati looks like that team that has continuously made AFC championships the last few years, made it to the Super Bowl a couple of years ago. The Bengals are back. Burrow's back. This offense is back. Jamar Chase is back. Joe Mixon even looked really good in this game here. There is a lot to be excited about with Cincinnati, and that's why I have them as high as I do. They've been soaring up the leaderboards the last few weeks. They're finally putting it all together, and the biggest thing, again, a healthy Joe Burrow. The defense looks great. Logan Wilson, probably one of the best coverage linebackers in the NFL right now. I'm pretty sure he leads interceptions by all linebackers since he's gotten in the NFL. And if he's not leading it, he's in like the top 3. But he is unbelievable in coverage. As long as the Bengals stay healthy, fearsome unit in the AFC. I'm all in on it. They're back. Bengals are back. At number 9, Miami Dolphins, they got themselves a good win. Even with some sloppy things here or there, some miscues offensively, they honestly probably could have beaten the Patriots like 41-17. But regardless, really great game by them. They handled their lesser opponent really, really well. Tua, now 6-0 against Bill Belichick. That is definitely worth mentioning. Somebody who does not fear the hooded man himself, Bill. this is the Miami Dolphins we've come to come and know. They have really big plays on offense. It feels like 2-3 times a game where you're just seeing a bomb go to somebody for a touchdown. It feels like something along those lines. And on top of that, getting Jalen Ramsey back, I think, is going to be huge for a defense that has been like average at best and sometimes below average. Jalen Ramsey making an impact the way he did, interception on Mac Jones, completely read him like a book in that throw, picked it off, damn near almost took the interception to the house. Having him there in that secondary, especially if they're healthy, that is a unit I do not want to be throwing footballs into. Best of luck, because if the Dolphins defense really figures it out, this could be a formidable unit. I know that they have yet to beat a single team that has a winning record. That is something that is in the back of my mind. That is why I have them as kind of like the worst of the best teams right now at number 9. I could maybe make an argument for the Bengals probably deserving to be above them considering some of the wins that they have right now. But I'll keep them here at 9. Good victory for them. They beat down on the lowly Patriots and the struggles that they're dealing with right now. Good victory for them and a good bounce back victory at that. Moving into the top 8, at the number 8 spot, Seattle Seahawks doing their thing, getting the job done in crunch time. And on top of that, not to mention, they went and added Leonard Williams. This Seahawks defense is going to finally arrive come next week. It's a unit that's been kind of flirting with being a really, really great defense. The addition of Leonard Williams, and for the cheap that they got him to, a 2nd round and a 5th round pick, unbelievable in my opinion. This is going to be a fun unit to watch. I'm very excited for the Seattle Seahawks right now. This was the game that you wanted to see them win, and they won in such a great position as well. Defensively, you shut things down, you get a big interception, clock is ticking. Geno Smith able to lead his offense all the way down. Beautiful throw and catch to Noah Fant, who takes it down the field like 20 some odd yards. Excellent touchdown pass to Jackson Smith and Jigba to win the game. This was that kind of marquee win that you want to see this team have if they're going to be legitimate contenders. And now they are in sole possession of the NFC West right now. Seattle Seahawks, just a few weeks ago, it felt like the 49ers are running away from it, but no. Or with it, rather. But no, the Seattle Seahawks are here, and they run the NFC West, and just brought in some reinforcements before the trade deadline to make sure they maintain that lead. At number 7, the Buffalo Bills. A good victory. I'll just call it a good victory. Still some things here or there that I'm not in love with offensively, but I did finally come to a conclusion about the Buffalo Bills, and it's one that, I've kind of known, but I've just wanted to see change. But at this point, I'm just going to kind of accept it for what it is. This offense will live and die by Josh Allen's play. And at this point, I don't really think you can change it. Josh Allen, when he's on it, is just a complete game changer. And when you try to take away what he does best, I think you get the fumbly, ugly Buffalo Bills offense we've seen sometimes this year. But when you just let Josh Allen do his thing, magic can happen. That really is how it is over there in Buffalo. I think this offense truly lives and dies by Josh Allen's play. And I'm kind of here for it, to be honest with you. Josh Allen, in a way, reminds me like that risk-taking gambler style that he plays. It's like watching Brett Favre, but just a massive version of Brett Favre. He is a moose on the field. He can run the football. He can run over your defenders with the football. He just needs to protect himself better. That's all it really is. If he can just protect himself, if he can figure out when to slide and maybe drop the shoulder a little bit less into some of those plays and maybe not take as many risks, I would be a little more comfortable with it. But it's exciting to watch. It really is. And they came out hot against the Buccaneers. Defense looks really good right now, despite the injuries that they have. It's one of those teams that just, I feel like when Josh Allen's clicking, the rest of that team is clicking. They feed off the energy he brings. And at this point, just buy into it, because they win when Josh Allen's rolling. So if it's got to be the Josh Allen show, it's got to be the Josh Allen show. And I'm here for it. At number 6, Dallas Cowboys, like I said, completely just dismantling very early on the Los Angeles Rams. The game wasn't even close from the very beginning here. It was like a very, very clear difference in talent between both these teams. It was good to see Micah Parsons get in there and get really disruptive as well. Dak Prescott, Really good game on his part, 4 touchdowns. And I loved watching them feed CeeDee Lamb. We've been hearing it from CeeDee Lamb himself. Why are you going to draft a wide receiver in the first round and not utilize him to his fullest? Feed CeeDee Lamb. He is your number 1 wide receiver. Continue to feed CeeDee Lamb. Same thing like we could say with the Bills. Feed Stephon Diggs. All these teams that have these perennial number 1 wide receivers, feed those guys. They are your number 1s for a reason. Don't just use them as like matchup nightmares. Look at what the Dolphins do with Tyreek Hill. Feed your number 1s. They are your number 1s for a reason. But really complete game from the Dallas Cowboys. Excellent job by them. Completely dismantling a lesser opponent the way they should. Gives them a +1 for the week in the rankings. And then the same thing could be said for the Detroit Lions. I will say that I was a little bit disappointed with them offensively at times in this game here. For them to come away with as many field goals as they did, it feels like they should have ran away with this game, and they didn't. And realistically, you leave like 2 or 3 touchdowns on the table in that game, so you're missing a solid, let's say, you're missing out on like 12 points at least, minimum. I would say maybe even more than that, but at least 12 points just kind of left on the table. But it was still a really good win defensively nonetheless. You hold the Raiders to 7 points, really bad pick 6, but I mean, that's kind of been Marcus Peters' thing for his entire career. He's a guy that's always in a really good position despite how old he is. Does not matter. He's going to make a play if he sees one, and he's very, very able to take it to the house, as we saw. But overall, it was a good win. Would have liked to see a few less, not few less mistakes, but just I would have liked to see those drives get finished off for touchdowns. I felt like I was watching that game at like 9-7 and was just thinking to myself like, wow, like this game should easily be 21-7 right now, and the Lions should be en route to a rout, because Jahmyr Gibbs had himself a monster performance, and I would have liked to see him maybe garner another touchdown or 2 in that game here. And I don't have him in fantasy or anything like that. I'm not a fantasy football guy, but for the fantasy lovers, I would have loved to see Jahmyr Gibbs maybe get another touchdown or 2. And then moving into the top 4 teams in the NFL to finish things off. At number 4, dropping a couple of spots here with a really ugly loss to the Denver Broncos, we have the Kansas City Chiefs at number 4. At number 3, moving up another spot here, we have the Jacksonville Jaguars. At number 2, we are looking at the Baltimore Ravens. And then at number 1, staying put where they are, the Philadelphia Eagles, back in their throne, comfortably seated. At number 4, the Chiefs. I know there was conversation about Patrick Mahomes being sick, so if that is the case, really unfortunate. But the offense was just not in rhythm all night long. To let the Denver Broncos, of all teams, who are currently in the position of having one of the most historically bad defenses we've ever seen, to let them kind of shut you down and hold you to 9 points, not a great look. However, it's their first loss since week 1. I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. Off week against a division rival. At some point, I guess you were eventually going to lose to the Denver Broncos. So if there was ever a time to do it, I guess it would be now. Get that bad loss out of the way. I'm looking forward to seeing a Chiefs team roll into Germany next week against the Miami Dolphins and see just what the Dolphins are all about against another ferocious AFC contender like the reigning Super Bowl champions, Kansas City Chiefs. But just not a great game for them from, I wouldn't even say top to bottom, because the defense actually held their own fairly well. It just really came down to the offense was not really moving at all, and some really untimely turnovers. But overall, I'm not too down on the Chiefs right now. They were due a loss. Here it is. Let's move on. Moving into number 3, the Jacksonville Jaguars. And I will say that a few weeks ago, I would not have expected to have them here, but right now they are just on a complete roll, and they weathered the storm against a Pittsburgh defense that has been lights out the last few weeks. Trevor Lawrence and company, one of those teams again, and I like basically what I said with the Detroit Lions. I would have liked to see them maybe finish off some more drives. I think they also settled for like 4 field goals in that game, if I'm not mistaken. They had 12 points off of field goals. I would have liked to see them maybe get another touchdown, but overall, right now, they're rolling. They're hot. They are winning games. I think they're on a 3-game winning streak right now. They have not lost in quite some time. Or maybe it's even bigger than that. Actually, no. What are they on right now? They were 1-2, so 5-game winning streak right now. They are 6-2 right now. They're on a 5-game winning streak right now. The Jaguars, since being 1-2, are the hottest team in the NFL right now. I believe, if I'm remembering correctly, they own the longest winning streak now that the Chiefs have lost. So with that, don't sleep on the Jacksonville Jaguars because they have their ish figured out right now. Baltimore Ravens moving up a spot here. Not as again, another one of those. I hate saying this, but it is like something I would point out, considering where these two teams are in the power rankings. Not as dominant as a victory as I would have expected. I kind of expected them to completely throttle and dismantle the Arizona Cardinals, but a very respectable, dominant victory nonetheless. I'm here for it. I mean, it's one of those things where we talked about it earlier in the season. It was going to take some time for this offense to really figure themselves out. And it feels like they're kind of really hitting that stride where Lamar Jackson is evolving into more of a passing quarterback now. Yes, he's still going to kill you with his legs if you give him the opportunity to, but he has looked really good, really comfortable throwing the football, and it's just a big fat middle finger to all the people that have been doubting Lamar Jackson, calling him a running back. I have been rooting for this guy since his MVP season, and I am so glad to see that the Ravens are where they are with him under center and with him healthy, happy, and paid, because this is a dominant team. Not even to get into just how ferocious this defense is, and I was somewhat concerned about the defense because they had so much turnover on the defensive line. A lot of young guys stepping up into starting roles after a bunch of older guys left this offseason, and they haven't skipped a beat, and honestly, they might be better for it because you got a bunch of young guns now that are trying to make a point and prove who they are. I'm here for it. I am here for it. This Ravens team is a threat, and I would not be shocked to see them playing in February for a Super Bowl title this year. And then at number 1, the Philadelphia Eagles. I mean, they have one loss on the season. I think they are the NFL's premier team right now. It's not always pretty. It's sometimes very ugly, but they get the job done. There are games where their defense maybe doesn't hang on as well as it should. There are games where their offense maybe doesn't show up quite as aggressively as you'd want them to. But at the end of the day, they are pulling off victories every single week, sans the Jets game, but that Jets defense has proven to be a problem for pretty much everybody so far this season. I am just so thoroughly impressed with the ability, whether they're in the lead, to hang on and win games, where they're down bad and being able to battle back and win games. Jalen Hurts is a leader, and he has this offense firing on a level that I don't think any other team in the NFL is really firing on right now. So hats off to the Eagles. They maintain their number 1 spot. There was a legitimate point in that game where I did not think they were going to win, and I was like, wow, this is on the parity in the NFL this year is just on another level, and it speaks volumes that a team that is ranked number 17th, in my opinion, is absolutely taking it to the number 1 team in the NFL right now. But you earn that number 1 spot by winning games like you had this week, where you find yourself in a position where you should not be in, and you just dig yourself out of that hole, and you come out victorious in the end. This Eagles team is built to win and win now. And again, another one of those teams that I just would not be shocked to see playing in the Super Bowl come the end of the season, representing the NFC. But those are my power rankings for this week. If you made it to the end of the video, I greatly appreciate it. I will see you all next time. Have a good one.